All right, so I know we'll probably have some others trickling in here, and I assume we'll have the session recorded here for anybody else that's not able to attend, or there was another kind of session that caught their eye. But I think I'm just going to jump into things because we've only got 20 minutes and it's going to move kind of quickly. So again, thanks everyone for joining our session today, for participating in AccuConnect. And this session is going to be from Profix on powering up Acumatica by improving your budgeting and planning. I'm Scott Collada. I work on our partnerships and alliances team, and part of my role at Profix is educating our partners' communities, like the Acumatica community, on our solution space as a whole. So in this presentation, I'll be hopefully shedding a light on our space, which is often referred to as the Corporate Performance Management space, or CPM. We do love our acronyms. But really, I like to say that we just belong to an industry segment that assists finance teams and organizations with automating and improving their financial planning and analysis, or FP&A processes, around their budgeting, reporting, and planning and forecasting. So if you asked, a typical Profix client, they wouldn't say that we're their CPM solution, but they would say that we're their budgeting and planning solution, or they use us for forecasting or consolidations or budgeting and reporting as kind of a point solution. So with that, hopefully it'll become a little bit more clear as we go on, but let's jump in. First things first, for those of you who are not familiar, I just wanted to share a little bit with who we are at Profix. So here's the kind of quick and dirty 50,000 foot overview. We've been in the FP&A software space since 1987. We've got a Canadian headquarters just outside of Toronto, and global operations with offices in the States, all across Europe, UK, Denmark, and also in Brazil. At this point, we've got something like 2,500 customers in 100 plus countries, and hopefully, from what you can see and given our experiences here, and from what we've learned over this time span, we can help to pass on some of our knowledge and what we see in the market and best practices and the importance of utilizing an FP&A solution. You can also see that we maintain our Acumatica certified application status as well. All right, so with that, before we discuss really what Profix can do as a solution, I think it's important to speak about current state for finance teams. So let's talk about spreadsheets. For many organizations, the need to reduce dependency on spreadsheets-only planning, that's been the longstanding reason as to why solutions like Profix even exist. Yet, we still need to also accept from our perspective that, spreadsheets for the typical finance individual and organization, they're one of the most widely used tools in finance, and they can be extremely powerful. They've definitely got a place to be played in the whole finance world for entering and manipulating your numbers. However, there are going to be certain situations where you need to start looking to move beyond spreadsheets, as you're entering, becoming a mid-market company and the like. I mean, you should look to use something else to achieve, the agility and accuracy that you're going to need. And here are some scenarios just to kind of set the stage where, using spreadsheets can potentially lead to some time-consuming and even potentially costly errors. First and foremost, what we see is when spreadsheets start to get large. So not only are they going to get cumbersome as they get large for kind of collaboration and sending back and forth for, say, an iterative process like the annual budgeting process, but there's data to suggest that the typical spreadsheet contains errors in roughly 4% of its cells. So the larger your spreadsheet's going to get, and we're talking about thousands upon thousands of cells, the greater chance that it's not going to be accurate, and that's going to cascade throughout all your other formulas. They also lack the necessary security that a lot of organizations are looking for. Data needs to be hidden oftentimes from some of the readers, and in this case, a spreadsheet just doesn't offer the greatest level of privacy for your data or even for your calculations. So if you're, say, a private company and you don't want your revenue numbers or profitability, or most importantly, maybe people's payroll numbers to be viewable to anyone, you're just lacking that level of a security overlay in spreadsheets to accomplish that. Thirdly, if you believe you'll be experiencing kind of significant growth in headcount, revenue, as your company grows, so do the complexities of your spreadsheets. Scalability, is really tricky. It's not easy for spreadsheets to keep up as they're not a database. So more contributors to, say, like I was talking about earlier, an annual budget is going to lead to more time for finance having to consolidate those spreadsheets. And then this dovetails nicely into just my last point on this slide. Planning using spreadsheets alone, it just simply takes too much time. And this may be especially apt for those of you who are maybe currently or just about to start doing your annual budgeting process for 2023. The goals of getting spreadsheets back in a timely fashion from all the stakeholders that are often involved can be really an uphill battle for finance. There's a lot of issues with versioning and accuracy that plays a role in delays, and spreadsheets just really simply are not the ideal tool to use if you're trying to efficiently perform techniques like maybe zero-based budgeting or instituting a rolling forecast or doing some scenario planning. All right, so what can you do and why should you ultimately care? And I think to answer that, it's critical to take a look at the past few years, just to put things in context with, of course, an eye to the future. If there's one thing that I think the past few years have taught us, it's that it really is now the time for finance to really redefine its mission and become a more strategic partner with the rest of the organization. We're seeing a lot of CFOs that want to become that more strategic partner and help steer the ship during these, really up and down economic times that we're having. To go back a little bit further to 2020, when we're talking about, lockdowns and economic pullback that started to make the impact, it resulted in many organizations that we work with, including our own here at Profix, scrambling to triage things like immediate cash flow and liquidity and revenue projections, and pretty much everyone had to tear up their 2020 budget and plan by March, April, May, and come up with a new best and worst and mid case given the new conditions. And this only kind of compounded the already busy day-to-day challenges and time constraints that are faced by many finance teams, and planning that maybe in some cases that already needed improving was tasked to do even more frequently and faster. And we saw this kind of across the market. All right, so with that, transitioning a little bit to our solution here from kind of a data architecture perspective, we sit on top of your existing ERP system. So let's say Acumatica, connecting into and pulling information from GL tables, but also providing integrated financial planning, connecting to all those disparate data sources that any organization might have to really truly do that blending of financial and operational data. And then from there, it allows you the ability to do all sorts of interesting and really great things for finance, like collaborative budgeting, forecasting, creating what-if scenarios, ultimately bringing forward your data from multiple sources and really being able to compare apples to apples, and instead of having all that information siloed off and dumped out into Excel spreadsheets. Something that's really core to us too, with all your models built, Profix has access to a modern web browser. You can use it on your mobile or tablet device, but drilling back to the transactional level of detail, so that transactional level of detail that's in Acumatica through Profix within one system for finance, so you can get that granular answer that you're looking for in your data without having to jump from system to system to chase down what you need. All right, so I have a few specific examples. Given kind of our limited time today, I'm just going to stay in PowerPoint and in slides here. But if there is any interest in seeing Profix live, please do circle with me afterwards. I'll have my contact information up, or swing by our booth and express some interest, and we can definitely have a chat with you and see if doing a more kind of in-depth session and live demonstration of Profix is kind of worthwhile. But again, to get back to the slides here, I wanted to start off with a budgeting example. It's our bread and butter. It's usually the phase one of any organization kicking off a CPM level, application level, solution evaluation or deployment into their tech stack, they're usually looking at the annual budgeting process first, because there's a lot of usually manual issues with it and something that they're looking to address. So what I've done here is put ourselves in a budget manager's shoes. And this is what our budget entry template looks like in Profix. And it might look like a spreadsheet, which actually gives a lot of finance folks a big sigh of relief, because all that Excel comfortability is going to translate over, especially for your team. So there's a really kind of short and small learning curve. And at first blush, as well, it might even act like a spreadsheet. But what we've built here is no spreadsheet. And what differentiates Profix from a data entry perspective compared to Excel are some of the following. The first, the fact that each piece of data that you input into these cells gets stored to be referenced in other places in the system. It's this idea of centralized calculations and storage, and there's a database that's underpinning Profix. So for example, here, if you made an entry against the product marketing department, that's going to roll up to any report that's referencing kind of the top level marketing, which is going to be an aggregate of the three that you'll see on the side here: content and field and product marketing. Security is also built in. So I know I was harping on that before, but the example that we're seeing here would be for the marketing budget owner, where we can see that the template kind of automatically reflects that their write access applies just to marketing departments only that we can see here. If I would say just the product marketing budget owner, your administrator could choose, very simply just to set you up with a limited view just to that template. So you wouldn't have the ability to see content marketing and field marketing and the aggregated marketing level as well. And then you have the flexibility to create rules around budgeting for various accounts. So you can push, default spread methodology. If, let's say, you're entering numbers in at the total level and you just want to spread them across all the months evenly, or spread them across all the months capturing seasonality in there as well. Those two things can be done at the click of the button. Or what I think is really interesting, you can spread based on different drivers with the click of the button. So if you're putting, say, a total into your trade show budget for the year, and you want to spread that really simply based on maybe airfare, you're able to do that with just a couple clicks of the button here with Profix. The example here pictured does show a pre-populated budget based off of prior year actuals. But again, zero-based budgeting is possible. So it may be appropriate to use a zero-based budgeting kind of approach if you want to hold department heads more accountable and truly kind of reflect on the year ahead. And here, again, is going to be where you and your teammates can interact with the budget models in real time. And there's also versioning in case you need to fall back to a prior version, and complete auditability within Profix as well. So any data that's entered into any of the cells here, whether directly or through a spread, it's going to be easy to see who made the change and how they made the change with just a simple right click and a data history check. So this was all I wanted to touch on from kind of a standard operational expense budgeting standpoint. Let's go into kind of how would you forecast along with doing a standard plan, which is really critical. And again, given the market, or given the fact that market conditions can change so rapidly, so should your ability to forecast. And this is the example of a forecast planning sheet. It would be a single integrated and consolidated view of your most recent revenue forecast in this case. In this case, you see that Q1 and Q2 are already completed, and Profix has automatically pulled in current actuals into the report from, say, Acumatica. In addition to the previously planned forecast numbers, the yellow that you see there actually represents our new forecast estimate for the next 12 months. So knowing that, say, taking a scenario like this, revenue expectations might have been trending down, or in some cases, we saw certain organizations experiencing kind of explosive growth, you can look forward and modify the revenue expectations based on the latest information that you have available. Remaining months can be easily manipulated using existing data in the system, or manipulated manually as well, with a similar flexibility and that everybody has come to know with a typical spreadsheet. If you're currently doing static quarterly forecasts, Profix can definitely help to streamline that process as well. But what it's going to enable you to do is to do rolling forecasts over time. And the biggest benefit to forecasting, as we all know, is an avenue to reflect your most current data. So maybe since last month, say for an example, some customers have canceled, but you've got 3 big new contracts with implications to the end of the year that have been signed. So this means that part of your budget's now obsolete. And your rolling forecast can be the place where the latest and greatest is reflected. And then in addition, many organizations use similar capabilities in CPM to corporate performance management tools like Profix to revisit their forecasts and play out any number of potential what-if scenarios to kind of help minimize their risk when looking forward. And it's almost like I built this presentation. That's where exactly I'm going next: scenario planning and what-if analysis. So one of the really key components to utilizing a corporate performance management solution is the ability to easily facilitate scenario building by enabling just really quick and easy alternative models to be built from existing budgets and forecasts. So since your prior forecasts are live and available and fully integrated with Acumatica in this case, Profix would allow you the ability to model an endless array of possible scenarios based on changes in drivers like revenue or costs or personnel, and any others that are pertinent to your business in a very small window of time. The core concept here being, flexibility is key. You're enabled to test out different scenarios for your business. In this example, we've got a scenario analysis that's taking place at the halfway mark of the year. Again, you're pulling in 6 months of actuals from your system of record from Acumatica with six months of forecast data to run against. The scenarios are, we've got a best case with an increase in product and service revenue and a decrease in labor, material and manufacturing overhead. So kind of the dream scenario. The worst case represents, of course, a decrease in revenue numbers and an increase in your labor and material and overhead. And this is really where finance and other stakeholders can feel empowered to essentially play around with different scenarios based on things like market conditions and new hires and new suppliers and trends that have been identified in your data. I did have a couple other things to go over on this slide, but just in the interest of time and maybe getting to a few questions if there are any as we're wrapping up here, I'm just going to move on. But scenario planning, I can't stress more how impactful this has been in the last few years for our clients. If they weren't doing scenario planning with us, before 2020, they definitely made it a priority to kind of get up and running with us and scenario planning afterwards, because they realized just how critical it is. All right, so bear with me, just kind of one more material slide here, and then I can see if we've got any questions, and if not, let everybody go and experience the rest of AccuConnect. But just putting a bow on everything here, it's one of my favorite graphics. Just illustrates really the 4 key pillars of our solution. We covered budgeting and forecasting and scenario planning in a little bit of detail, but we may not have hit on your business need. You may see other things in here like capital expense planning or cash flow forecasting or job costing or consolidations and multi-currency if you've got a lot of entities and they're doing a lot of intercompany and you're dealing with a lot of different currencies. We really only saw the tip of the iceberg here today. Easily could have spent hours on this, but overall, hopefully, the message that you can take away is that FP&A and performance management systems like Profix are a better tool to help facilitate faster and more accurate planning. And if you were shaking your head in agreement when I was talking about any of those limitations or issues with spreadsheets, then it might be something that you want to look into for your business. All right, so with that, again, thank you everyone who was able to join for spending some time with us today. Hope you found it valuable. Thank you to everyone at AccuConnect. And I did want to mention, swing by our booth. We've got a poll question in there, and that enters you to win a $100 Amazon gift card in a draw as well. So I'm just checking in the session here. I'm not seeing a ton of questions, just going through the Q&A. So I think we can just wrap up here. But again, you've got my contact information, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions that you want to take offline. What do you mean by format, Jasmine? If you don't mind clarifying, is it just the solution as a whole, or? So our founders, they decided to form Profix and make the solution just because there wasn't a good solution for folks in accounting around the performance management. Everybody was dumping data out of their source systems into Excel. So they really wanted to make something that was actually built by folks in finance for folks in finance. So one of the core tenets in our solution, and where we differentiate from some other providers in the market, is that everything is meant to be owned and operated by the finance team. So the solution from implementation to management is owned by usually a CPA or somebody on the finance side of the house, not somebody in IT, which gives the finance team a lot of flexibility. And that was kind of one of the core tenets of, why our founders built Profix, and the kind of core tenet we still have to this day. No problem. Thank you for attending, and anybody else that was able to pop in, and anybody maybe that views this recording, feel free to reach out.